Hello, dancers. This is Ray Salsa with my beautiful fiance and partner, Annabelle.
Hello, everybody.
And we are great for our second video podcast with you today. We're very excited for this not new. She's actually been in this dance scene for many, many years. And I'm very honored, she's a very special person to me because she's helped me develop into the dancer I am today. And we would like to have Annabelle introduce her to you.
All right, I'm going to introduce our guest today. Our guest has been awarded 3 International Lifetime Achievement Awards in Europe and in the U.S. She was voted by her peers and students Best International Instructor at the Los Angeles Congress, British International Salsa Festival 2 years running, and Switzerland Congress in Zurich. She was the guest of honor at the Curacao Salsa Festival and the first annual Swiss Congress. She's taken first place in numerous dance competitions, most notably the famous Mayan competition out of Los Angeles, California, and the International Salsa and Hustle Pro Salsa Championships in Miami, Florida. Edie's passion is to share her talents with both students and audiences throughout the world with her gift of teaching stunning performances and down-to-earth internet advice columns and stories. She holds a 3rd degree Black Belt Salsa Master Instructor license and is an expert in business marketing strategies. She's also the Master of Ceremonies at many events throughout the world and has appeared on television and movies in several countries. Her instructor training and her certification continuous education program is second to none. Instructors from over 80 countries attend her dance business seminars and her webinars throughout the world. She also hosts online mentorship and coaching programs for students and instructors who wish to excel to levels beyond what they could do on their own. She has a world-famous full immersion, all-day intensive salsa boot camp, and those are held on the weekends all over the world for those who want to learn and stylize their salsa in just one day. And Edie coordinates, plans, and hosts dance camps, festivals, and congresses with different promoters throughout the world. They're aimed primarily at teaching people how to dance the Latin nightclub style at any age level. And this says, is this true that Edie now DJs her incredible music collection from all over the world at nightclubs, parties, and events as well? So let me introduce to you Edie The Salsa Freak. Hi.
Hi.
We're so glad to have you here with us, Sensei Edie. And before we go, we do refer to each other as Sensei.
Yeah.
But please explain why.
Okay. When we started the Black Belt Salsa program, I say we, it was a group of people at the time that were interested in helping me create a curriculum out here in Denver. And when we started this, there were also a few people that had asked about training with me, and pretty soon I just had this group that was really interested in creating a Black Belt Salsa curriculum. And the reason why I named it Black Belt Salsa, I'll never forget, I was at Congress once, I think I was in Belgium, and there was this really badass couple on the floor, and I was just looking at them and I was thinking, oh my God, they're black belts in this dance, because I was trying to figure out at the time, where were we going to have beginner, intermediate, advanced, and what were we going to call ourselves, out here? And I keep saying we, but it was really just me, because I came out to Denver, and there was really, there were people and there were classes and whatnot, and there were dancers, but nobody had really set up any type of systematic, methodical way of teaching salsa that I felt was adequate. Normally, most people teach a move of the week. You have your beginners. Everybody does the same thing. They do a right turn, and then they do a progressive left. We call it progressive left. It's really a crossbody lead with an inside turn that so many people used to call it. I don't like that because it's not really that, a crossbody lead with an inside turn if you're doing left to left, Anyway, make a long story short, when I was thinking about what am I going to call the studio, or what am I going to call this group that I'm forming, I said, wow, let's call it Black Belt Salsa. Why? Because I want people to be able to set a goal to get their black belt in dance. Why do we have to just reserve that name for martial artists? And so the name stuck. A lot of people thought it was cool. In fact, I have a lot of people who are in martial arts that are very attracted to taking our group classes and our privates. Why? Because they know what it takes to get a black belt in martial arts. Some of them have 4 or 5 black belts, and they come to me and they say, Edie, I want my black belt. And it's like an addiction, right? And I said, okay, so let's do this. And so when I was training my instructors, I started to talk to my brother who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And he was saying, well, you have a sensei, you have a grandeur, you have this. I said, sensei. He goes, yeah, you're the sensei of the school. I said, why do you call them sensei? And he goes, it's not really like you're the king or the queen or something like that, and you're untouchable. On the contrary, it just means somebody in Japanese, it means somebody who has gone before you. And so you have this knowledge, this experience that people want to learn from. And so they should call you sensei as a matter of respect. And so it's not just like you're their friend. In fact, I believe in some martial arts, my brother in particular said that in jiu-jitsu, you're not really supposed to socialize with your group. And I thought, okay, well, I don't want to take it that far. I still want to socialize. I want to go dancing with my students. I want to dance with my apprentices, So I've taken it just to the name, the name of sensei. And when they come into and they say, sensei, I want this sensei, it just kind of separates me from everyone else in the group. And it's stuck. And sometimes people forget, sometimes they call me Edie because you're personable. You're talking to them, you're touching them, you're showing them, you're messing up just as much as they are sometimes. So it sometimes comes out and it's really no big deal, but my apprentices do call me sensei. And for the instructors that have their own schools, I call them sensei. I call them Sensei Ray, for example, Sensei Willie, Sensei Tom, Sensei who's the latest in Malaysia, Ken, so it's nice to be able to have that kind of bond in our group. That's why the name Sensei.
Well, thank you. You mentioned Belgium, and you actually had a black belt school in Brussels. I don't know if it's still going on. That's the first time I heard the term black belt salsa. I was living in Belgium. I was stationed there with NATO as an Army officer. And I just started that's where I started dancing. So, of course, the first year, all my classes were in French. So I could get a really good class in French if I wanted to.
That's great.
And I heard this black belt salsa in Brussels. Well, Brussels is a bit of a drive from where I lived.
Right.
I lived in the south side of Belgium. But when I came back to the States, I met this dance instructor who was leaving the town as I was coming in, named Antonio Medina.
Wow.
I asked him what he learned, and he said, well, I learned black belt salsa. I'm like, I've heard of that. And I didn't know a squat about it, but I heard of it. It was in Europe. So this was all over the world. And it really drew me to it. He told me about the process and how you learn it. And I just said, well, that takes away my frustration because I have ADHD, like serious, right?
Yes.
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 And having to remember and memorize I can get it 1 second, like a movement of the week or a pattern. And then 5 minutes later, I'll forget it. So choreo is not my strength. So this is why I was really attracted to this system.
We have to remind your viewers that this is a system-based approach to learning. It's not a pattern-based approach. A lot of schools, I would say 99.9% of the schools out there will teach a pattern, especially before a nightclub, and then they will teach a completely different, unrelated pattern the next week. And the students don't get a chance to grow and to understand where that pattern or where the concepts and the bits and pieces of that pattern come from. Meaning, what is the root of this pattern? Is it based on a crossbody lead? Is it based on a right or left turn? Is it an open break? Is it an opposite side crossbody or a copa? Once I think it clicks for people when, for example, I show them a YouTube video and I show them a little tiny segment of maybe a world famous dancer teaching a pattern. And the world famous dancer will show the pattern and they'll say, okay, take the girl, put her over here, and then you turn right, and then you go on this side, and then you turn left, and then take her over there. And the audience is just hoping desperately that the girl that they're with can keep up with this, you know. And after I train them in the system, I show that exact same YouTube video again to the student, and the student looks at it and says, oh my God, that's just a right turn into a crossbody lead into a copa ending in a basket. Yeah, that's all it is. And what's interesting about the students that I train, they say they go to congresses and everybody after the Congress has their video camera videotaping the world famous instructor that just did this amazing pattern, right? And they say, Edie, we don't need to video because we know what the root of this is. We know that it's just a right turn into a crossbody lead into a copa into a basket. That's all it is. And they can not only do the pattern that the instructor did, but they can also mix it up. Instead of using her hands, they'll use her shoulders, or instead of using the left hand, they'll use the right hand, or they'll do a tailbone move, or use her hips and his waist to do the exact same pattern. And what I tell my students is, look, if you go to a nightclub and there's a class before, I want you all night long to not only to learn that pattern that the instructor is teaching, which is maybe 3 or 4 8 counts, and I want you all night long to go down the body with that pattern. He showed you high hand, how to do it with her hands the whole time.
Most
now,
common.
the whole night, I want you to now try touching her shoulder with that same pattern. I want you to touch your own shoulder with that same pattern, or touch her hips and her waist. I'm sorry, her hips, your waist. We got to get that right. I want you to vary up that pattern all night long with different women. Well, won't the students get bored? By the way, my students call me Edie, okay, but my apprentices call me Sensei. All right, just to let you know. Anyway, so they say, Edie, won't the lady get bored with this? I'm doing the same damn pattern. No, they will never get bored. Why? Because you're stimulating them on different parts of her body. You're doing moves instead of over your head. You're doing it over the shoulder, you know, or across your heart or whatever. Nobody will ever know. And that has proved to be wildly successful, especially here in Denver.
And there, of course, we're all having to learn both lead and follow on 1 and on 2,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And the school that I've been learning from for the last 2 years is an On2 school. And then the studio that you teach at currently
was primarily
On1.
on 1.
And
Yes.
so I get it all. Yeah.
But now we're switching it up. We have an on 2 in the evening, so we're excited about that.
Oh, that's fantastic. The whole world is shifting to On2. I was really against it in the beginning. I was like, what? On1 can't die. Well, On1 will never die. Why? Because all of the Latin American people that come over from, you know, the like Guatemala and Colombia and Mexico and, you know, El Salvador, all those people, they dance cumbia. You know, they know cumbia. They dance many dances, but they know cumbia. And cumbia steps back on 1, 1, 2, 3. And so they hear that powerful 1, right? So on 1 will always be here. I think on 2 is easier on the woman. Why? Because she actually has 1 more second in the turn to complete her spin on either side of the line. And you'll learn this in the program. Anything that can be done on 1 can be done on 2, and vice versa. You just have to finagle with the numbering a little bit during your moves, but that's more detail that I don't want to get in this session. But another reason why I teach on 2 first to the beginners is because I was an on 1 teacher and dancer for 24 years. Okay. And learning on 2 for me was difficult as a follow. I moved to New York. I lived in New York for a while. And I completely submersed myself in on 2, because when you go to the socials out there, everybody's on 2. When you go to normal dance clubs, not everyone is on 2, because you still have some dancers who do not go to classes regularly. People in New York, this is like a subculture for them, especially the Puerto Rican population. They go to dance classes, they go out dancing, they go to socials. They rarely will go to a dance club because people there just don't know how to dance their style, you know, and they're all up into their style and onto and whatnot. And I was kind of like, wow, this is really snobbish, you know, but then I realized, wow, there's a reason for this. When you learn this and the onto way, you realize as a woman that you can complete your double spin in like half the time that you could on one. And I was always perplexed over that. I thought, what is the deal? You know, I am a college educated woman that plays the flute, all right? And I understand music. And why is on two so much easier for a woman spins than on one? And I analyzed it. I asked engineers. I asked Milton and James Cobo, what is it about on two that feels easier? It's the same song. It's the same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counts. But when I'm in LA and I'm dancing, because I lived in LA for 21 years, and that's where I learned on one, you know, at the time, 90% of the people in LA were on one. Now it's more like, I would say 60% are on one. More and more people are moving on two in LA. Anyway, so when I was in LA, I would dance the same song with the same guy and I would be exhausted. And then I would dance the same song with the same guy in New York and I was fine. Even I got a letter from a woman who was a PhD. She went out, she had to move to finish up her PhD in New York. And she says, Edie, she emailed me and she said, I don't sweat out here. I'm gaining weight. I said, what do you mean you don't sweat in New York? And she goes, when I go out dancing, I don't sweat as much as I did in LA. I said, what is it, the humidity? No, she says, I'm not as tired. And so I analyzed the music and I analyzed what are the women, on what count are the women turning onto? When do they start and when do they end? And unbelievably, they have one more second of time. There's a pause on count 4 during the spin.
Yeah.
There's no pause during the spin on one. It's just 1, 2, 3, right? Or no, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3. She spins on 5, 6, 7. So we'll get into that during the summit. But going back to why we teach on two first is because when I would train guys in LA who had been dancing for years and years on one, trying to get them to move to on two was a mind melt for them. They were tearing out their hairs, tearing out their beards. They were saying, I just can't get this. And we would go over it and over it. We would spend hours just on the basics on two. And so then I started teaching on two, my group classes, and I started really getting serious, especially when an on one guy said, you know, Edie, I've spent so much time on two. I don't even want to go back to on one because I like on two better. So I found men that were dancing on one, moving to on two, not going back, not wanting to go back to on one. And I was always wondering, why? Are you a snob? And this is what creates the on two attitude. Why are you being a jerk? Why are all the on two dancers just want to stick to on two? And why are they being snobs? On two snob. And they said, it's because it's just taken me so long to learn freaking on two. And so it was like, okay, listen. So then I started training guys just on two, starting on two. I didn't on my group classes yet. And so I said, you know, you're going to have to learn on one because you live here in Denver and the majority of people are on one. And they said, that's fine. Just teach me on two first because I do a lot of traveling. I go to congresses and it just seems like all the better people are on two. And I resented that remark. And I thought, you know, I'm an on one dancer and you're telling me that the better people are on two. Look, I'm the fastest spinner on one. But when I go to on two and I'm dancing New York, I'm even faster. I can do not only a double, I can do a triple and a quad on 5, 6, 7, you know. That's because I punched as hard as I could. And I really tried so hard to complete 3 or 4 spins within an 8 count on one that when I got to New York, it was like, this is a piece of cake. Not only, you know, this is awesome. And so I started teaching on two out here and just to my private lesson students. And then when I transitioned them to them to on one, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be hell on earth, you know.
It was easier.
10 hours to teach an on one. I'm sorry, a guy that was trained on one to on two took 10 hours minimum, right? Just to get him used to the basics and kind of like getting into it. 10 minutes to teach an on two guy on one.
Yeah, I went through that on one, on two transition myself. And I still dance both because our city is mixed. But yeah, it took me hours of just practicing the cross body lead on two.
Yeah.
I did not know what to do with my feet on two.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And guys, the guys are the ones that suffer the most. And I feel for them, you know, because I'm a lead myself and I didn't really appreciate what they were going through until I went through it myself. And I thought, oh my God, these poor men. So what I did was decided to do everybody a favor, get one of my students, his name is Gabriel. He said, just teach on two. He said, everywhere I go, everyone's on two because he travels quite a bit. And he goes, all the best dance teams are on two, all the better dancers on two. And I said, Gabriel, that's not true. But that was his perception, you know. And he said, just teach on two. And when I started to teach my classes on two, my apprentices were really against it. What? Can't we transition from on one to on two? Does it have to be in one day? And I said, it has to be in one day. And they said, what? I said, how are you going to transition? Dance on three for a while? Dance on the two? What are you going to do? There's no transition. It's just, you have to go the cold turkey. And so we spent, I think it was just a few weekends just with the apprentices, getting them used to dancing on two. And you know what was astonishing is that a couple of my apprentices, Felix and Mateo in particular, when they were dancing on one, they were always off time. They were dancing on the 5, on the 3. They were always off time. I would say, where's the beat? And I would spend hours with them on finding the first beat of the music, right? Which is not easy, especially if you're not a trained musician. And when we transitioned to on two, I could not believe it. I felt they got it. They were on time. They were on point. And that just made me believe, you know what? There are some people who are born on two dancers that feel it in their bones. There are some people that are born on one dancer that feel it in their bones, you know? And so I decided from that point on, I said, I'm going to teach my beginners, all of them on two. Nobody complained in our group classes when we did the transition, except the orange belts. The orange belts had been training for several months in white, and then for several months in white, and then several months in orange. And all of a sudden we're going on two. They were going crazy, but because everybody else was doing it, our whole school was doing it, they said, okay, we're going to do it too. So it did take them a couple months. I did lose a couple people, okay, who decided not to come back because we were teaching on two. But over time, they realized, wow, you know, even Denver, people are at the hottest nightclub in Denver, the better dancers are on two. And it's like, oh my God, you know, so we're slowly changing Denver to an on two community. And I think the younger people are starting to appreciate it more. But we still teach on one at Yellow Belt. We transition everybody. We say, okay, now we're going to do a few basics at Yellow. We spend a whole month learning on one. And then we continue with our on two practice later on, because when they do go to the clubs, they do realize, wow, a lot of these people are on one. And the guys just don't even ask the girls on one or on two. I have one private lesson guy. He'll ask, he'll say, would you like on one or on two? Because he wants to show off that he knows both, which is kind of funny, but it's great. Yeah, I love it because I get a choice, because I can hear the song. And if it's an on one song, I'll want to dance on one. You know, if it's an on two song, then obviously I want to dance on two. But yeah, I had Felix come up to me last year and he said, Edie, you're not going to believe what happened to me. I was at the Avalon and I was dancing with this woman and she asked me to dance again. And I was on two the whole time. He doesn't dance on one anymore. He refuses. And I call him an on two snob, but anyway, he'll dance on one if he absolutely has to, but he stopped asking the girls, do you want on one or on two? He just puts them on two. And so she asked him again right after the song was over, will you dance with me again? Because he's a phenomenal dancer. this Felix, I trained him. He didn't know anything. Now he's just one of the finest leads in the nation, I think. Anyway, he was dancing with her on two, and he said, Edie, you're not going to believe what she said afterward. I said, what? He said, oh, Felix, thank you for dancing on one with me. I can't stand these on two snobs. And he looked at her and he says, I was on two with you the entire song. And you know what's interesting is I go to these clubs, and most of the people, they're not on time. They're just having so much fun dancing together and being together that it doesn't matter really what beat, the girl, if you're a great lead, the girl is going to dance with you, whether you're on one, on two, on five, it doesn't matter. In Cuba, the women determine the beat. The women might start dancing on the three. The guy will dance with her and he'll ask her to dance, okay? And they'll kind of wave a little bit. He'll allow her to listen to the music, and then he'll feel what beat she's on, and then he'll go with her beat from the start. And so they don't dance to timing or counts out there. I mean, this is where salsa originated. When you start getting into the on two, on one, it's an American thing. It's a Europe thing. It's where it's classes, it's groups, it's organized, it's competitions. That's where we have to start to put a box around this thing called salsa, and where we have to structure it. And it kind of gets it's disappointing in a way. Sometimes I just want to go out there because I know and in fact, there's a guy named Stacy Lopez out of Puerto Rico. We were dancing on the clave. We were dancing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the dance floor using 5 steps instead of 6. And that made it fun because I never knew what beat my crossbody lead was going to start on every single crossbody lead of the thing. It was amazing. And I thought that's really dancing on clave, is when you're dancing on 5 steps instead of 6 steps within an 8 beat count, and I thought how wonderful this is. How cool is this, not have to worry about, are you on 2? Did you go forward on 6? You're coming forward on 5, buddy. You need to come forward on 1. It kind of, you have the on 2 mafia mop squad out there watching people. Oh, they're off time. Who gives a shit, right? You get to the point in your salsa life where you just want to have fun and dance and whatnot. Now, obviously, I know there has to be a structure. You have to organize. You have to make sure everybody's doing the same thing, and that kind of steals the joy out of it a little bit. But in order to create a business out of this, you have to have some sort of structure. So that's why I decided, okay, let's teach on 2 first. Let's get everybody on the beat. And, if you go to New York, especially to New York Congress, everybody, the on 2 mafia is out there watching if you're on time. So that's what we do. But sometimes I just like the freedom of not having to count,
That'll be interesting. You keep mentioning apprentices.
Uh-huh.
And we've mentioned a few times here. Let's talk about the apprentice program that you started and the power behind it in the schools that you have.
Salsa Freak. See her style is so unique. Edie The Salsa Freak. Dancing each day of the week. Edie The Salsa Freak. Every move is magnifique.